the risk of public policy changing, things like Shoreham, other plants that have been built but never operated. How do you approach public policy and try to determine whether it's going to be consistent or whether it's going to change?
Well, Llewellyn, I'm going to sidestep your question, so that's truth and
I'm used to it. I'm a journalist.
That's truth in advertising up front, and I just want to say thank you to David Blee and the council for being invited to be here today. And I think a primary motivation for David's invitation is an annual survey that another banker and I do of attitudes in Wall Street towards new nuclear. I think that's David's motivation for my being here. So I'm going to answer the question in that regard. And one of the questions that we ask in our survey, we pose 5 risks to the financial community. And we ask the people that we survey to rank these 5 risks. And what's interesting is it's no surprise that the #1 risk in the ranking is construction risk. Carl talked about that. Other people this morning have alluded to that. And so we've done the survey 4 years in a row now, and every year construction has been the #1 risk. And we might touch on that later, why that is. What's really interesting is what's happened to positions 2 and 3 in the risk ranking. When we started the survey 4 years ago, the #2 risk that people gave us, people like Carl and Richard and John and 45 other people we talked to in Wall Street, the #2 risk was the NRC, the regulatory risk, the licensing risk, things like that. The #3 risk was public policy. Now, public policy was a very broadly defined category of risk, but that had to do with things like DOE, waste disposal, Yucca Mountain, low-level waste, state legislatures fouling things up, Congress fouling things up, and so forth. And when we started, public policy risk was risk #3, right in the middle. And what has happened over the last 4 years is that public policy risk has moved into second place. And that's really quite instructive, and I've had the opportunity to talk about that change in ranking with some people. And I would just say that the trend for public policy risk was actually, if it would have continued, public policy risk would have been #1 this year if it would have continued on its trend. What happened was it bent over a little bit. And in the discussions with Wall Street, my conclusion is that people have heard a lot of affirmative remarks about nuclear energy from a clearly Democratic administration. And that appears to have made a difference. Now, public policy is still #2, but only by a hair above NRC now. But it did not move into first place, and that was clearly the trend in the previous 3 years. So I think just perceptions of risk are sometimes even more important than the risks themselves. And I think this is an example of one where what people have done in the public policy environment, President Obama, Secretary Chu, and so forth, have helped turn that perception of public policy risk in the members of the financial community that we talk to. So.